Pauline Parker, and Juliet Hulme. New Zealand is certainly no stranger when it comes to crimes of passion. But in the case of two teenage lesbian lovers who murdered one of their parents, shocked the country in the mid-1950s. The two girls were so desperate not to be parted from one another that they were prepared to kill in order to stop it happening. They were later to be called the Heavenly Creatures, though they were not quite Romeo and Juliet. However, in truth, it was quite an intimate affair that indeed would have flourished had nothing stood in their way. Years after, one of them would admit that they were not really lovers. But then, lesbians or not, what they did was beyond belief. The relationship between the two girls, who had first met in high school, was certainly something. Pauline Yvonne Parker and Juliet Marion Hulme came from different worlds. Pauline's father managed a fish shop, while her mother, Honora Mary Parker, took in lodgers to make ends meet. Juliet's father was a famous British physicist, and her mother a marriage counsellor. Nevertheless, the two girls were drawn to each other, perhaps due to their similarities in temperament. Pauline's education had not been of the highest standard, but she was a gifted and imaginative writer. And Juliet was deeply sensitive to the point of being psychologically fragile. Over time, what started out as a friendship became much, much more. The two adolescent girls, Pauline was 16, while her friend Juliet was 15, began to explore their sexuality with one another, and they soon became passionate lovers. Indeed, as Juliet would later say, when they were together, it was better than heaven. These two outcasts initially bonded over their respective ailments, but as their friendship developed, they formed an elaborate fantasy life. Being dynamic, they would often sneak out and spend the night, acting out stories involving their own creative characters. Their parents, however, would later become disturbed by their pairing. They worried that their relationship was indeed sexual, since back then homosexuality was still viewed as a mental illness. And although later considered as lesbians, their intimacy may have been the obsession between their imaginations and spiritual feelings. Gradually, Pauline and Juliet's courtship intensified to an almost permanent bonding, leaving within no doubt that they had become quite inseparable. The Heavenly Creatures believed that they would be together forever. Unfortunately, events were conspiring to bring their relationship to an end. Juliet's marriage counselor mother divorced her father, and the young girl was deeply traumatized when she caught her mother in bed with a new man. Soon after, her father announced that he was returning to Britain to take up a new post, and Juliet would be sent to live with relatives in South Africa, where it was hoped her health would improve. Both girls were devastated at the idea of being separated, but Honora Parker made no secret of her relief. She had grown suspicious of their friendship and the strange hold Juliet had over her daughter. So when Pauline begged to be allowed to go to South Africa too, she refused. In doing so, she became the focus of the girls' frustration and anger. However, if Pauline was orphaned, they reasoned, there would be no one to stop her joining Juliet in South Africa. As Pauline wrote in her diary on February 13, 1954, "Why could mother not die? Dozens of people are dying. Thousands are dying every day. So why not mother and father too?" It would be one of many diary entries that would eventually help to convict her. And so, they plotted to remove Pauline's mother. Early in June, the girls began formulating their wicked plan behind Honora's back. As their twisted minds continued to grow even more unsteadily, Pauline continued to update the progress of her darkening thoughts, detailing even more enthusiastically of her own mother's impending death. We have worked it all out carefully and are both thrilled with the idea. Naturally, we feel a trifle nervous, but the anticipation is great. Later she wrote, I'm trying to think of some way I want it to appear a natural or an accidental death. We discussed the mordia fully, that is their plan. So next time I write in a diary, Mother will be dead. How odd. Yet, how pleasing. Their chance came on June 22nd, 1954. The entry in Pauline's diary that day was morbidly headed as the day of the happy event. It would be an event they would never forget. On that fatal day, and not long before Juliet was due to leave, Honora Parker took the heavenly creatures to Victoria Park, Christchurch, where they had tea and cakes at a kiosk. After this treat, all three of them got up and went for a walk in the park. They strolled for some distance until they were alone, deep among Mother Nature and far from the madding crowd. And when they had reached a secluded spot, just beyond a small bridge, Honora stooped to examine an odd-looking pink stone. Juliet had secretly dropped it, and who now pointed it out to her. Shielded by foliage, the girls were pretty much obscured from the rest of the world. No one could see what was about to happen. Unaware of being distracted, Honora went to pick up the stone. Then it happened. As she bent down to pick up the stone, Pauline hit her over the head with a woman's stocking loaded with half a brick, and she collapsed. However, the girls had miscalculated. In their twisted minds, they believed one blow would kill her, but it didn't. The girls now wished it hadn't happened, but some force possessed them into thinking it is too late to stop. Later, Juliet said, After the first blow was struck, I knew it would be necessary for us to kill her. I was terrified, hysterical. So keeping to their horrendous plot, the girls continued to hit her over and over. They took it in turns as they did so, and sobbing to their actions. And when they were sure she was gone, the girls rushed back to the kiosk for help, dramatically crying out, "Mummy's been hurt!" The police were called, and on arrival, the girls claimed that Honora had been hurt in a fall, but it certainly didn't explain the 45 blows to her head when the body was examined. The stocking and brick were found close by, and the girls were arrested. Both of them admitted to helping in the grisly task of killing Miss Honora Parker, and so were thus found equally responsible. After a sensational trial, they were found guilty of murder on August 29th, and due to their ages were sentenced to just 5 years in prison, but on the condition that when they were released, they could never see each other ever again. It is interesting to note that during their trial, the girls attempted to plead not guilty by reason of insanity. It, however, collapsed when Pauline uttered coldly, "I knew it was wrong to murder, and I knew at the time I was murdering somebody. You would have to be an absolute moron not to know murder was against the law." you.